the problem is for 50, 60 years, you just said, and if we know what the kind of the three main areas to focus on are, what's our problem, and what are you doing about it? Because you're doing some interesting things.
Well, the problem is that it's really hard work. You have entrenched bureaucracies and systems in place that don't want to change. Change is difficult unless you have some consequence associated with it. And there has been no consequence, basically, in the public K-12 education system in the United States for failure. I mean, you all know when you test our kids, U.S. kids, in math or science or reading, and you do a PISA test or a NAEP test or any kind of test you want that's some internationally normed and not just a recitation test, but a thinking test. You know how our kids do. You know, roughly a third of our kids are, quote, proficient, which means they're at grade level. The other 2/3 are not. They're either basic, which is a year or two behind grade level, or below basic, which means they're illiterate. So what's happened to our public school system that's produced this? Not a thing. The discussion is about, should we pay teachers more, or should we tax more, or should we make classrooms smaller? Some simple silver bullet fix. And there is no silver bullet. It happens to be hard work. You have to go and look at the teachers and see, do they know the subject material? Are they competent? Do they like to teach? Are they paid for performance, or are they fired? New York City is a great example. How many teachers have been fired in New York City for incompetence or poor performance? You'll have Joel Klein here. Ask Joel that question.
Maybe you can ask him.
Let's talk about standards or expectations.
Yeah.
You know, you had 45 governors get together, starting back under the Bush administration, not via the Department of Education, but the governors through the NGA decide why you wanted to raise expectations. You had the Common Core, new set of expectations for language arts, mathematics, science to come. That got politicized because, the Department of Education, Washington, D.C. is going to dictate what we do in our 15,000 school districts. Throw that out. We don't want higher standards. Well, maybe we want higher standards, but not those higher standards, so let's not do anything. That's the discussion amongst the Republicans today, my party, and I think they're crazy, they're nuts, they're idiots, but that's okay.
You heard it here, folks. Yeah.
So you can't get higher standards. Anybody who thinks the 1,000 or so schools of education that are training the teachers are getting the best students in our college system and training them to be content experts, try to teach math if you don't know math and don't love math. How many of you think elementary school teachers, you know, grades K through 6, love mathematics and really understand the beauty of mathematics and can enthuse kids that math is good? I mean, I love your videos, but until you get teachers who know the subject material and are get kids enthused about it, forget about bias, forget about diversity, forget about all that stuff. You're not going to teach kids math because the teachers hate math. It's difficult. Not all of them. We have some great teachers. We have some great school systems. Enough of that. The other part of your question, what am I doing about it? I got tired of talking on this subject a long time ago. I do very few of these conferences like you're running today. I decided it's more fun to do something than it is to talk about it. So I got involved with the charter school system that's running in Arizona. We'll have 20 schools this fall. Last ranking, you picked the Washington Post ranking or the U.S. News and World Report ranking. We have 4 of the top 10 high schools in the country in our little system. It's called BASIS, by the way. It's way more fun to start a new school and get 700 or 800 kids in the school and show the results than it is to talk about things we've been talking about for 60 or 70 years. Good teachers, high expectations, accountability. Those are the 3 principles our schools are founded on.
I have one more quick question for you before we call Jamie Cassep up to join us, because I'd like to broaden that conversation with you. And that's, you also spoke about global competition and global preparedness. And I think you've also done some really interesting work along those lines. Could you just speak to that a little bit? Global standards.
I think the important thing in today's economy to measure any education system, and I know how painful it is to talk about testing kids and how demeaning it is to kids and teachers to be tested, but let's face facts. I mean, what do you do in your life where you don't get tested on a routine basis? You know, I'm a professional engineer. I had to pass a test to become a PE. Doctors have to pass tests to become medical practitioners. Lawyers have to pass tests. CPAs have to pass tests. You need to measure the system, and you measure it with an internationally benchmark exam, one that shows kids can think and solve problems, not that they can just recite the periodic table. And there are lots of these. And we've been doing it in the U.S. for a long time. The NAEP test has been around for a long time. The PISA tests have been around for a long time. SATs have been around for a long time. I don't care which test you pick, but just pick one, and then you measure your performance on that internationally benchmarked test. You know, if you run a company, it's pretty simple. You make microprocessors like Intel does. Nobody gives you the benefit of the doubt. Nobody says, why, you know, your microprocessor doesn't have to run as fast as somebody else's because I like you. They say, I'll buy your microprocessor because it's the best in the world. I'll buy your students and employ your students because they're the best in the world, not because they're U.S. students. I used to say in discussions like this when I was still a CEO, hey, I run an international company. 70% of our business is done outside the U.S. I don't have to hire another U.S. citizen to make my company successful. I could hire the best in the world wherever they live and be successful. I'm going to hire your kids if they're good. You know, and I'm as patriotic as anybody. I have 4 grandkids in their early 20s. You know, I want them to have a great future. But if they aren't competitive in the world's marketplace, it's going to be tough on them. And there's nothing that Washington, D.C. can do to overcome that. There's nothing any of the states can do to overcome that. You have to have the best educated workforce if you want opportunity for those kids. Pretty simple.